Yeah, I don't need to. I just the start.
Yeah, the perfect play is here. See if Rich has got an extra office or something.
He owns an escrow upstairs. He's not gonna allow the escrow here. He wants us to send escrows to him. He's always pushing us for escrows.
Oh yeah, the perfect play would be here or close to here.
Yeah, there's a lot.
I gotta worry about the expense of finding an office somewhere. So that's additional expense.
What's the name of the guy, Tony? Yeah, I have Chuck now. I have King.
Yeah. Well, I had to leave. To get here.
Hello, guys.
To get here. But I've got a conference call with him and Ruby at 3 o'clock.
Can you guys hear me?
Oh, yep. I had to unmute.
Hey, Nelson. Mr. Chuck, how are you, sir? My name is Jorge Mesa. Can hear you. Let me. You need to unmute.
There we go. How's that?
Good, sir. How are you, sir?
I'm fine, thank you.
So real fast, and who's gonna do the introduction, Kim? Kim or Nelson?
I'm going to introduce Chuck. Nelson's going to lay the ground rules for the meeting, correct, Nelson?
And ask the questions?
So we'll tag team the questions, Kim.
All right.
Sorry, I knew it, my dogs.
So yeah, so we'll alternate on the questions, George.
All
between
right,
you and I.
perfect. We have already 23 or 26 people, 28 people. There was 127 subscribed, so hopefully we have a good group.
Okay.
We're gonna start in 2 minutes. I'm gonna, Mr. Chuck. So the way it works, Kim is gonna do the introduction. Nelson and Kim, they're gonna be asking the questions. We don't like to stop you all the time. So people are gonna type the questions that they have on the chat room, and we go from there. I don't really get involved because everybody gets confused with my accent. So
I like your accent.
no Jorge Mesa asking questions.
Also, Chris was supposed to be here. I don't know if she's coming in from the home warranty. So I was going to let her have a minute or so just to say hello. And
Chris. What's her name?
Chris Clark.
I don't see any Chris Clark so far, but that doesn't mean that she's not here. That just means that I'm old and I don't see her. So 1 minute, everybody's gonna be in. Mr. Chuck, we wait for 5 minutes. We start at 1:05.
Okay.
Just to give it enough time for everybody to join.
Great.
Sonia Flores.
Hey, Chuck, you're getting better with age, dude.
Thank you, Kim. I appreciate that.
Chuck.
Kim, you're married, okay? Stop flirting.
Oh, I'm not dead.
And now we're recording this, so I can send this to your husband.
Oh, go ahead.
She's been doing this for 20 years, by the
He
way.
knows my personality.
All right, guys, everybody's gonna go in right now.
Hi, Jorge. Hi, Kim. Hi, everyone.
Hi, how are you guys?
Good. How are you, Jorge?
Good afternoon. Thank you for being on another Title Tuesday, where you get fat on knowledge and not on tacos. Taco Tuesday is gone. Now we have Title Tuesday. You get fat on knowledge. I need to change jokes. It's getting too old.
You need some new material. Chris is on the call. Jorge, just so you know.
All right, perfect. So guys, we're gonna start 1:05 like every week. 1:05 we're gonna start, so we have 4 more minutes.
Jorge, te miras más delgado.
I lost 17 pounds so far.
I can tell. I can see it. Oh, you looks good.
It's too bad that I lose weight when I get sick, right? I get scared and I started my diet and I started eating salad and I started eating good. So,
Yeah.
but don't worry, I'm like the LTV. it goes up is bad, it goes down is good, right? On the distressed
Yeah.
properties. Well,
Oh, yeah.
guess what? At one point I'm gonna start going up.
Well, you've lost quite a bit. 17 pounds is a lot.
Well, heart surgery can do it.
I bet.
All those tacos you ate for all those years.
Okay, so I have a PowerPoint I want to share with everybody. So as long as I can share my screen.
I'm gonna make you the host.
Okay, great.
All right, sir, you're the host. You can share your screen. And thank you again for doing this for us.
My pleasure. So let's just make sure that this is, can you see that, anybody?
Not yet, we don't see anything.
Okay. So we want to view.
If you wanna send it to me
Hey,
or
wait, hang on a
him,
second. Wait, let me look down here. Hang on. Here we go.
all right, guys, we're gonna start in 2 minutes. 2 minutes, we're gonna start. Thank you for being here.
Kim, can you see that?
I don't see anything yet, Chuck.
All right. Let's see how I can do this. Screen sharing.
Yes, it's
Here we
coming
go.
up.
All right.
Yep.
All right. So you just told me when you want me to get
2 more
started.
minutes to start. We have 2 minutes to start.
Okay, great.
Thank you guys for being here. And as you guys know, we have our YouTube channel for Title Tuesday. So I'm gonna be posting on the chat room the link in case you wanna go back and to see any of the old trainings. You can
Awesome.
see it. 1 minute to start. 1 minute. All right, guys. Thank you for being on Title Tuesday. One more time, I want to thank everybody. And it's becoming hard to get good speakers. Well, I think we did it again. We have a great speaker, great trainer. I thought it was going to be hard, but I saw one of Chuck's trainings and I was amazed. So it's a good trainer. You guys are going to enjoy this class. And I want to thank everybody for being here. Thank everybody for your support for this Title Tuesday. And Kim, can you please help me to do the introduction?
Hi, everybody. Good to see all of you. I would love to introduce our speaker for today, Chuck Pirro, who I consider a friend and an ex-co-worker of mine. I'd like to just give a quick little synopsis who Chuck is. Chuck Pirro is the Regional Vice President of Disclosure Source. Chuck started his first years in the business, believe it or not, first 3 years down in San Diego as a title rep. And then Chuck began his career in risk management in 1998, and that's with the passage of the NHD Act, Disclosure Act. Over the last 15 years, and I can attest to this because I had him at many of my broker meetings to educate all of you, Chuck has done thousands of presentations across the state of California. He's in the old days, not anymore, Chuck. I know you've put a lot of airline mileage on your credit card. So I just want to thank him for being here and also give Chris Clark, who's on the call. Chris, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, Chris Clark is with Fidelity Home Warranty, who also works alongside with Chuck Pirro at Disclosure Source. And I wanted to thank her for her sponsoring today and give her some time to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Chris Clark. I work in the San Gabriel Valley. We're working out of our home offices now, but just know that I am here in my office and I'll leave my contact information. And if anybody needs anything, please don't hesitate to call me.
Thank you, Chris. And Nelson, if you want to lay out the ground rules for today, and then we'll let Chuck go for it.
All right, wonderful. Happy Tuesday, everyone. We have ground rules. If this is the first time joining us on Untitled Tuesday, we welcome you. So number one, all questions are to be entered in the chat and questions will be asked throughout the presentation on your behalf. Number two, please make sure your device is muted. That's very important to us. Number three, if your question is not asked or answered, you will be given the speaker's contact information so you can get in touch with them directly. And number four, I'd like to thank all of our Pacific Coast title reps from Los Angeles, the Inland Empire, Oxnard, Ventura, Orange County, and San Diego County for inviting all of our clients and being part of Title Tuesday here at Pacific Coast. So if anyone would like a recorded copy of this seminar, make sure to please enter your information on the chat with your full name, email, phone number, and who your Pacific Coast title rep is. Lastly, look out for our next Title Tuesday via social media or email. Next week, we are going dark because it's Thanksgiving week. So our next Title Tuesday is scheduled on Tuesday, December 1st. Topics will include title tips and Pacific Coast title trifecta. So now we'd like to hand it over to our guest speaker, Mr. Chuck Pirro. Thank you.
Thank you, Nelson, and thanks for everybody that's joining our presentation today. I know that NHD might not be real exciting for a lot of people, but it's a very important part of a real estate transaction in California. And I thought I would present this as looking at NHD through the eyes of a seller. You know, it's kind of funny that like title and home warranties and the other things that we sell in our industry, we never get to meet the people who actually pay for the services that we provide. And that's certainly true with natural hazard disclosure reports that are sold to a seller through the real estate agent. And I just want to give a voice to the seller to give you a different perspective when you're out shopping for or using a natural hazard disclosure company. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. I hope. Here we go. So this is about risk management. And the question really comes up, whose liability is at risk when you disclose natural hazards? And all you really have to do would be, this thing just doesn't want to, here we go. All you have to do is just look at the natural hazard disclosure statement. And this comes with every natural hazard disclosure report that you get. This statement's going to be on there. The rest of the report's not going to be consistent, but you'll always get this. And there's a signature box on there, and who signs the signature box? And it specifies down in this little paragraph, transfer and their agent acknowledge that they've exercised good faith in the selection of a third party. And the signature box, the agent has to sign it. So make no mistake about it. The agent and the seller share equal liability when it comes to disclosing natural hazards. Now let's talk a little bit about the industry, because the industry is not a regulated industry. And without proper government supervision, or even so much as an association that brings us together to establish some sort of code of ethics, NHD providers can and do produce these reports in any manner they choose, whether that's in compliance with the seller's legal requirements or not. And this is an important thing to understand. Non-regulation puts pressure on real estate agents to know what they need to disclose, because without an agency overseeing these companies to make sure they're in compliance with the law, they can do whatever they want. So this presentation, like I said, is intended to heighten awareness of the effects of non-regulation in California's NHD industry. And like I said before, gives a voice to those who have the most to lose if their agent selects the wrong NHD provider, and that's the seller. So let me just what does the seller say? Let's go back here. The seller would say, I expect my real estate agent to purchase a disclosure report on my behalf from a company that satisfies my legal disclosure requirements, as well as defend me if I were to be sued for non-disclosure or incorrect disclosure. Now, as a result of non-regulation, this industry is largely comprised, and when I say largely comprised, I mean by a vast majority, it's comprised of unqualified entrepreneurs that don't employ qualified experts to produce their reports, nor do they produce the reports in compliance with the seller's legal requirements. Now, I know that's a big statement, but after 21 years in this industry, I can tell you that there are few reports out there that are produced in compliance with the law. Now, let me tell you just how easy it is to become an NHD provider, because all you have to do really is have a computer and a game plan, and you can become an NHD provider, because there are no licenses or certifications given to NHD providers. There are no background checks for NHD providers. Bonds aren't necessary. No one validates insurance. No one validates provider qualifications. And that is a sad testimonial to this industry. You know, I kind of consider myself more of an advocate for real estate agents and particular sellers when it comes to this industry and the reports that this industry provides. Oh, no one confirms compliance with government requirements. So what does this non-regulated industry offer you? In many cases, non-compliant reports provided by non-qualified providers. Many of them load the report up with unnecessary subjective disclosures. We'll get into that in a minute. Inadequate or zero liability protection, dangerous legal loopholes, out-of-state arbitration, and providers with no E&O insurance. I know that doesn't paint a pretty picture, but that's what it is. So why is careful vetting necessary for NHD companies? Well, this thing just doesn't want to, here we go. Because simply assuming, and this is just speaking to the real estate agents, simply assuming that an NHD company produces a report in compliance with the law and will defend you if they make a mistake is a very risky assumption. Now, what could go wrong with an NHD report? Plenty. First, of course, they could miss hazards. They could not disclose required information. They could exclude locally identified hazard zones, which is a huge, or could be a huge liability. They could get incorrect disclosure of tax data. These are special assessment districts like Melrose districts. They could use outdated maps. or the report could be produced on the wrong parcel. These are just some of the things that could go wrong. But what's worse, you could discover that you have little or no liability protection when using some of these companies. And I'll just ask a simple question. What is the number one reason why agents use NHD providers? And it's to provide you and your client with liability protection. Otherwise, you just do the report yourself if there was no consequence to a wrong disclosure. So what does the seller say? Are you 100% certain that the NHD company you selected for me provides me with ample liability protection? Now, again, I don't think a seller knows anything about this stuff. That's why they rely on real estate agents to take them through this transaction so they're not exposed to liability at the end. But again, they don't know this stuff. So I'm just going to give a voice to the seller. And if I was a seller knowing what I know today, I would ask my agent, hey, are you sure the company you're selected for me is going to protect me in the event that they make a mistake? And I would just add, when was the last time you checked? So think about this. Non-regulation promotes non-compliance. Hey, if there's nobody looking over the shoulder of these NHD companies to make sure they are providing you with the disclosures that you are required to provide, then non-compliance would then promote litigation. Look, if nobody's looking over my shoulder, I can produce the report any way I want and sell them to non-suspecting real estate agents. And then again, like I said, non-compliance promotes litigation, the very thing you're trying to avoid here. So, according to California Civil Code, and I don't do a whole lot of civil code stuff, but this is important. Do you know who can legally produce a third-party NHD report for you? Do you know who could really do that? Well, if we look at Civil Code 1103.4C, what does it say? It says the delivery of a report or an opinion prepared by a licensed engineer, a land surveyor, a geologist, or an expert in natural hazard discovery dealing with matters within the scope of the professional's license shall be sufficient compliance. So I would suggest that if your report is not produced by a licensed professional, then your report is not produced in sufficient compliance with the law. So non-regulation simply means there's no accountability for NHD companies to use qualified experts to produce reports. And the biggest red flag in the NHD industry is anybody, qualified or not, can produce these reports and sell them to you. And that is not what, I know it's not what you want to hear, but that is the reality of the NHD industry. Now, let me just show you some pictures here. We'll take a little break from this narrative and just show you some pictures because stuff does happen. And let's take a look at this property right here. Now, I became aware of this property just by watching the news at night. And in Southern California, and actually in Oceanside, California, this house really has a problem, as you can see. And every night on the local news, there'd be a reporter standing from this position with the house behind him as all of these news stations were waiting for this house to fall over. So I went up to this property with my camera, and I'll share with you the pictures I took. I took a lot of pictures. I just condensed them down for this presentation. But as you can see, the garage door is open. So I approached the garage door, and that's what I found when I looked inside the garage. The garage was actually turned into a room, but you can see the crack in the slab. Now, I don't know what you put on the transfer disclosure statement, crack in garage slab. But you can see here's a 6-foot ladder over here to the left. As you can see the damage done to this house. And when you look into the living room, that's what I found when I looked into the living room. And then the house next door, if you look at the house next door, the patio slab is almost at a 90-degree angle. And you used to be able to walk out onto that surface back there that's now covered with a tarp, as this landslide is taking this property and destroying it. And where does that dirt go? It goes onto the neighbor's house behind them. And this is their backyard and what's left of their swimming pool. And if you think about it, thank God these guys had a swimming pool. Otherwise, all that dirt would have been in or on their home. So I went to the house one day and let's see, here we go. House looked like this. I went back a couple of weeks later and it looked like this. And if you were to go to this neighborhood today, it would look like this, as they had to take down 6 houses that were affected by this landslide. Okay, let's take a look at this house. This is another house that I became aware of from one of my reps. This happens to be in Bonita, which is in San Diego County. And I'm sure you've all driven around and seen tarps on hillsides. Well, tarps on hillsides don't work, as evidenced in these photographs. And as we can see here, it's another house affected by a landslide. When I got up onto the property, I walked into the backyard. And as you can see, the landslide went right back to the foundation of the house. And one step out of that back door, it's a pretty long drop to the street below. So what's my point here? Over the years, I've been asked, because I always talk about non-regulation, what does non-regulation look like to me? And I'll tell you at the time, 7 out of 8 NHD providers failed to disclose the hazards associated with these properties that I've shown you just now. And why is that? It's because most of these non-qualified entrepreneurs that are producing reports for California real estate agents purchase data from data suppliers. And these data suppliers don't research all of the available local hazard maps. And as a result, you miss hazards. So the question that I would just come up with would be, who would you rather have producing your NHD report? Would you rather have a qualified geologist? Or do you want this guy, a non-qualified entrepreneur? Now look, there's nothing wrong with an entrepreneur, don't get me wrong, because I think that we all have an entrepreneurial spirit to us in order to do the jobs that we do. But there's no room for entrepreneurs in an industry that's designed to protect your liability. Now, what's the seller say? The seller says, I should feel confident that my agent has carefully selected an NHD company that employs a qualified expert, produces my report in compliance with California law, and provides me with ample liability protection. Let's just give a voice to the seller. They might not say this to you, but believe me, if they knew what we all know, this is what they're asking you. They're not asking you to go get me a deal on an NHD report. So let's look at some of the disclosures, what's required and what isn't required. Now, the required disclosures are those that are determined by California Civil Code. Subjective disclosures, those are designed by the provider. They're not legally required, subjective disclosures. And all they really do is add liability to your transaction. So according to California Civil Code, there are only about 13 or so required disclosures of the seller. And every real estate agent should know basically what those are. They're flood zones, fire zones, earthquake zones. There's airport influence and proximity zones. There's active mining operations, etc. However, according to one NHD provider, they'll tell you there's 34 required disclosures. That's 20 additional disclosures that are not legally required of the seller. Okay? 20 additional disclosures that were devised by the NHD provider for marketing purposes only. No, they're going to give you this line: we give you more, therefore we are better. And I reject that premise because, well, just for a lot of reasons. Number one, it just adds a whole lot of liability to your transaction. So what does excessive disclosures look like? Well, here's just what it looks like. It looks like a whole bunch of pages on a report that you don't need. Excuse me. None of these are required. All this does is add liability to your transaction. It makes more decisions for the buyer. Every time you give a buyer a bit of information in terms of a disclosure, the buyer has to make the decision to go ahead with the transaction or not. Why would we want to increase those decisions rather than just keep them to what is legally required? It's just not sensible risk management to load the report up with stuff that the seller doesn't need to disclose. Now, let me show you how they do this, because this is pretty interesting. This is just a copy and paste off of an NHD report. And none of these are required, but look how they do this. Now, each one of these little statements has something in common. First of all, it always starts off with subject property. But then it says, is located in an area. Okay, so let's look at the third one. Subject property is located in an area subject to strong ground shaking, etc. Well, what is an area? How do you make a disclosure like this? What is an area? Because I could argue that this is an area, yet this is a hazard zone, the red zone up on top. And the turquoise would be a parcel. And just because of this little area up here, this property is in that hazard zone. I could say that this is an area, yet this is a hazard zone. If you can see that red shaded area, that's an earthquake fault zone. Look, I could also say that this is an area. And if you see where I'm coming from here, area, you can't really define area. It's not site specific. It's not considered statutory disclosure. And again, area is the marketing of needless information. So let me show you. I mean, I just think this is kind of silly, but this is an actual report from an NHD provider. And what does this disclosure say? Here it is. Subject property is located in an area. What area? Well, it's an area where sightings of rare species and or natural communities have been recorded, including the following: sightings of monarch butterflies. I mean, honestly, you can't make this stuff up. This is an NHD company that's disclosing to a potential buyer that the property's in an area where they've had sightings of monarch butterflies. What does this, what's this mean? And why would anybody think that this is important? Is this a consequence to the seller or the buyer? I mean, this is just ridiculous to me. So what's the point in adding needless disclosures for the seller and the agent? What's the point in providing disclosures that have not been approved by the government? And what's the point in accepting any disclosure that's based on the subjective opinion of an NHD provider that might not even be qualified to produce these reports? So let's go back to the seller. What's the seller say about this? If it's not legally required, why would I disclose something that some NHD company independently created? Now, there is a common sense way to address some of these issues, not monarch butterflies, but other subjective issues that pop up on reports. And that is to provide these as an advisory rather than a disclosure. Okay? Now, what is an advisory? An advisory is an opinion or a recommendation offered as a guide to action. An advisory is based on relevant information, but an advisory removes liability from you and your seller, which is exactly what you're trying to do. Advisories remove liability. But it'd be great if these were advisory reports as opposed to disclosure reports. But this is what it is. So, to give you an example. Now here's a map. It doesn't matter where it is, but here's a map that's disclosing something. And it's disclosing something by way of those blue boxes that you see around here. So let's assume that the red star in the middle of this map is the subject property. The question is, what are the blue squares? And I've gotten a lot of answers over the years. Are they expired listings? Are they active listings? Are they Starbucks? Are they gas stations? Well, I'll give you a hint. This is what they are. And I could just imagine there are people gasping right now at this image. But yes, this is a California sex offender locator map. Now let's get rid of these guys. And let's just ask this question. Who wants this page included in their natural hazard disclosure report? And there shouldn't be one hand going up, because the answer is nobody wants a page like this on their NHD report. Can you imagine, as a real estate agent, if you were reviewing your NHD report with your buyer and you got to this page and the buyer said, "What's this?" And the answer would be, "Oh, these are just the sex offenders in the neighborhood." When what's going to happen? The buyer's going to just withdraw the offer and walk. A lot of buyers, only to find that the next house they go to and they get a report, it's going to show the same kind of information. So you don't provide the map, but you must address sex offenders in the neighborhood. And how do you do that? You give them a website. Oh, by the way, there are sex offenders in the neighborhood, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer. If you'd like more information about it, here's a website you can go look at and you can go discover it for yourself. It's called an advisory. And that shifts the responsibility of discovery over to the buyer and takes it away from the seller. Now, I don't know, I mean, how would you know if a sex offender lived across the street or down the street or around the corner? I don't know how you know without going to the Megan's Law website to find out. Okay? So with the report that we provide, which is disclosure source, it's a commercial, but we'll throw this in. We give you 4 or 5 pages of advisories with links so that buyers can go research this stuff on their own. And again, it takes the liability away from the seller, because there are some things here that are relevant, but the government hasn't made it mandatory to disclose these to a potential buyer. So we use them as advisories. Again, notices and advisories eliminate your liability. Okay, so the median price in California is $470,000, although I think that might have creeped up a little bit. And I think the median price home in Los Angeles County is somewhere in the neighborhood of $765,000 or up, depending on, of course, the community in which you live. Question: what if you discovered that your NHD provider limited their liability to only $100,000. That wouldn't be good news. So let's talk about what I consider to be the most important pages of your NHD report, and that's going to be the terms and conditions pages. Now, what do you typically find in terms and conditions pages? Well, let me put it up here on the screen so that you can see it. There it is. And let me get it a little bit bigger for you. Fine print disclaimers. That's why I think that these are the most important pages of your NHD report, because those pages will pretty much specify what the NHD provider will do in the event of an error. So the fine print, education, and experience. How can we put this together? Well, I do it like this. Education is what you get when you read the fine print. Experience is what you get when you don't. So I'll just ask a couple questions here. Would you use an NHD provider if they stated they had no duty to defend you if they made a mistake? I would guess you would say no. Let's take a look at this NHD report. I've blanked out the name of the company for obvious reasons, but what does the NHD company say here? Well, they say right here, they shall have no duty to defend. Not what you want to see. What does this company say? Well, it says right down here in the box, shall have no duty to indemnify the recipients or to defend or pay attorney's fees, costs, or expenses incurred by the recipient. I guess the better question is here, who are the recipients of an NHD report? That would be the seller and the seller's agent. It's not the buyer. Would you use an NHD provider if they limited their liability to $100,000 when the median price home is, $800,000? What does this company have to say? They'll pay up to a maximum of $100,000. What does this company say? Not to exceed $10,000 on their liability. Even worse. Would you use an NHD provider if they required you to fund your own defense? Well, that's why you use NHD companies, is to provide you with a liability shield. What does this company say? Just read this little box down here. It says, should it become necessary for the company to give testimony or consult with the client, a separate and special arrangement and an additional fee will apply. The client shall be responsible for any additional time, fees, and charges of the company. That's a pretty vague statement that I would be very, very careful about using a company like this. Would you use an NHD provider if they stated they were not responsible for mistakes in the report? I don't think so, but you got to read the fine print. And what does this company say here? Shall not be responsible or liable for errors in the tax data it obtains from third-party suppliers. Well, look, everybody, if the NHD company is saying that they're not responsible for errors in the tax data, then the obvious question would be, then who is? And I would think that would probably default to the seller and the agent for the seller. Would you use an NHD provider if they made you waive the benefit of a defense? Well, what does this company say? The recipients and each of them expressly waive the benefits of California Civil Code 2778. What's this company say? Same exact thing. The recipients and each of them expressly waive the benefits of California Civil Code 2778. Now, if I'm a seller, I would want to know, what am I waiving with 2778? What am I expressly waiving from 2778? What the heck is this? This is why it's important that you read the terms and conditions, because this is the stuff you find. What's 2778? That confirms the NHD company's obligation to reimburse your legal expenses and establishes the NHD provider's obligation to defend you if requested to do so. Who on earth would waive the benefit of a defense and the cost of defending? Who would waive that? The answer is nobody would waive that. So what's the seller saying? My real estate agent has a fiduciary duty to safeguard my liability. I don't want assumptions. I want assurance. Okay, at the same time, I'm not asking my agent to get me the cheapest report. In fact, it's quite the contrary. I want an NHD report that satisfies my legal disclosure requirements while at the same time protecting my liability in the event of an error that ultimately leads to litigation. Okay, so in summary, as we wrap this thing up, a non-regulated NHD industry does not work to your advantage. And I'm just appalled that after over 20 years, the government hasn't gotten control of this industry. Okay? Non-regulation places more pressure on agents to select a company that fully complies with your legal disclosure requirements. Sellers seek protection from their agents, not bargains from non-qualified entrepreneur NHD reports that jeopardize their liability. Okay, an old saying I learned way back a long time ago: the bitterness of a bad product lingers long after the sweetness of low price is forgotten. And why would any professional real estate agent trust their liability with an entrepreneur-owned NHD company? Okay, and in California, when I tell you 95% of NHD providers are unqualified entrepreneurs that produce non-compliant reports, believe me, that is what's going on in this industry. You got a lot of people in this industry that don't belong in this industry. And if there was regulations, a lot of these guys would either have to step up and improve their product or just drop out of the market altogether. Okay? So at Disclosure Source, and this will be the only commercial you get from me today, our report satisfies your disclosure requirements. Number two, we put 0 meaningless subjective disclosures in the report. We have no stated liability limits like those other companies do, like I showed you. We have a qualified geologist on staff. We don't have liability escapes. There is no 2778 clause in our report. In fact, we are not a spinoff, but we're a subsidiary of a Fortune 500 company, which is Fidelity National Financial. You can go buy stock in our company. You can't buy stock in an entrepreneur-owned company that's one lawsuit away from closing their doors. Okay, we're part of a couple of platforms, SkySlope, Disclosure.io. And for every agent out there that's listening, you don't pay a dime for this report. Although you do benefit with the liability shield that we provide, it doesn't cost you anything. The seller pays $99 for an inclusive report. Okay? Now, I know when we're talking about money, there's always somebody that'll do it cheaper. So with that, here's my contact information. Again, my name is Chuck Pirro. You can reach me at my phone number directly, or you can email me at this address that you see on the screen. Okay, and I believe that ends this part of my show.
Chuck,
Yes.
Kim here. Remember we used to talk about we were gonna open an NHD out of our garage and sell tacos at the same
You
time.
can do it.
That's about what the agents really don't know when they're buying these NHDs. And how many, do you know, Chuck? I'm curious because I'm not up to speed. How many companies now are out there selling NHDs? Do you know about?
There's probably in excess of 60
Wow.
companies that are out there selling NHD reports. Some of them are online only. I would never, ever use an online company simply because who are you going to call when you have a problem?
Ghostbusters?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, online companies are no good for you.
There
With a company
is a-
like ours, you can always get a hold of Chris Clark, or you can get a hold of me. And I love talking to your clients who have questions about these reports.
Chuck, there was a question in the chat room I just want to grab because you've done such a great job of clearly outlining. But there was a question here from a gentleman that what is the liability amount for with you at Disclosure Source?
Well, there's no stated liability limit, but what's the liability on an NHD report? I would suggest the liability is the cost of the home. If you didn't disclose a potential hazard, let's say, just for the sake of this conversation, let's say an earthquake fault zone. If you didn't disclose the house was in an earthquake fault zone and the house was totally destroyed by an earthquake, then the damage would be the cost of the home. So that's why stated liability limits with some of these companies like $10,000 or $100,000 or any stated liability limit is not something you want to find in your report.
Thank you. And someone just wanted you quickly to repost your information, where to reach you for your services,
Okay, let's see if I can do that.
if you can.
Uh,
Thank you so much, Chuck, for giving us this information. And if you have questions, Chuck's, I know, great and available, and Chris Clark as well from Fidelity Warranty and Disclosure Source.
all right, let's see if I can.
And I think we're going to end our meeting with, is Jorge, you're there, right? With some title information.
I am here. I am here.
You see that, Kim?
Yes, thank you for putting that up again. Here's Chuck's info. If you didn't catch it for the last time, here's his info. And again, if you have questions, reach out to them.
We're gonna send the recording, and I'm gonna put the information for.
Thank
Chuck.
you. Thank
All right,
you.
guys. So to end this training, to start next week, there's no training. Thanksgiving, so have a safe Thanksgiving. I don't know if you're gonna do something or not, but it's not that bad to miss the turkey. It will be hard to miss my dad or my aunt or my father-in-law, my wife. Be careful, because it's better to miss that turkey this year than miss a family member. There was one of my friends just got married. It was a big wedding, and I just got informed that a bunch of people got sick. So be careful with those going to places with a lot of people. Thank God this is gonna be over soon. It's coming soon. So I have a friend on the call, John Torres. I was betting with him who's gonna be first, the vaccination or the Dodgers winning, and I got wrong. I think the Dodgers won. So yeah, that was first. John, I know you're very happy, and I'm happy for all the Dodger fans. Title tip, I need to give you a tip to make this phone call legal. Title tip, it's pretty simple. Be ready for your next wave of distressed properties. That's going to be a huge market. I just did a training at Norma Gill's office, but it's going to be a huge market that it's approaching. Guys, get ready. Talk to your title rep. Do one-on-ones. We can do one-on-ones. We can do your office. We can do small groups. Get ready. Get trained, because that market is going to be huge. And you want to be part of that market. You don't want to miss that market, because it's going to be a lot of business for you guys. Market is changing all the time. So now it's coming a distressed market with equity. That somebody posted, when do you anticipate that market? Well, the moratorium is over on December 31st. So I was talking to somebody very smart on my family, because I'm not a smart guy. I have 2 sisters and I have a brother, and they're all smart people. My brother is a super smart guy. He's a lawyer. I'm the dumb one of the family. And he told me, no, there's not going to be any extensions because of the amount of equity that there's in these properties. They're not gonna help anybody, because lenders, what they want, new loans. And state of California, what they want, taxes. They want more taxes. So yes, this is gonna be a big market for you guys. So make sure that you approach every single of the title reps in this call. There's a lot of title reps for David, Justin, Nicole, a lot. I don't wanna miss anybody. So forget that I mentioned a few. There's a lot of title reps in these calls. Sorry, Nelson, that they can do a training for you. We can do one-on-ones, but it's gonna be huge. Remember, we did a training on foreclosures, and our first slide was brainwaves, right? Who can read that? Only a neurologist can read that. That's called an EEG, an electroencephalogram. Only a doctor who goes to school, to medical school for almost 10 years can read that. Well, guess what? You need to become the doctor of your area, the doctor of this market. You need to be that one. You need to get trained. Please give us a call. We can help you get in the train you will need to succeed on this upcoming market. One more time, next week, there's no Title Tuesday. In 2 weeks, we have the perfect trifecta. We're gonna touch on the 3 different apps that we have: Pacific Title Toolbox, Title Profile, and Pacific Agent One. And bad news is gonna be me. I have an accent, so make sure to try to understand what I'm saying, because I love my accent. I will never change my accent, and it's not gonna get better anytime soon. So thank you so much for being here. Have a safe and blessed Thanksgiving, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Mesa.
you.
Thank you,
you, guys.
everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Bye, everyone.
Great
Thank
class.
you.
Thank you.
Stay
Ron, you
safe.
did it. You did it.
I told you.
You did it. I'm happy for you. I'm happy for you.
Thank you very much.
Great
Thank you, guys.
info. Thanks, Jorge. Bye, guys.
Stay.
you.
Bye.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you, anyone.
Thank you, Jorge.
Thank you, guys. Now I can go back to my salad. I have my salad here. See, I'm eating healthy, finally. I need to get sick to go back to eating healthy. All right, I think we are done. Chuck, one more time, thank you so much for your time.